Good day, YouTube. What's happening? Today you're here with 7 Vision. We're gonna talk about music video settings. So this would be dope if you want to learn how to shoot music videos or really just create content. This video will help you out. Our music video camera settings, or camera settings for music videos. And right here we have a Canon 5D sitting here, just to have it sitting here. May do some examples with it, may not, but Canon 5D Mark IV. Now, we're not going to talk about the camera necessarily, so I'm not going to show you the menus because this can work for any camera that you have. First thing first, we're going to start with frames per second, FPS. To break it down in a simple way to remember, in a simple way to help you understand what different frames per second are for, simple. 24 frames per second performance scene. That's it. For scenes that you don't want to slow down and post, you're shooting at 24 frames per second. 24 frames per second give you just this natural look. Like, so if you're waving your hand, you see like a natural motion blur with your eyes. That's what 24 frames per second does. Performance scenes or anything that you don't want to slow down. Now, if you want slow motion in your video, let's say B-roll, you want slow motion, you want to shoot in 60 frames per second, or you want to shoot in 120 frames per second, or whatever your cameras allow over that. Now, 60 frames per second music video, that's pretty much all I use. I don't have to use 120 frames per second for music videos. It'd be dope, you know, it just makes it slower, but 60 frames per second. 60 frames per second is for all your slow motion, so that's what you'll put it in. And then you also have 120 frames per second, which is even more smoother, even more slow motion. With your frames per second, your FPS, you're gonna also want to change your shutter speed. It goes together. I have a video where we talk about the exposure triangle, and this is kind of it right here. So shutter speed. Now, if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, you want to double your shutter speed. Well, really you want to double your shutter speed for whatever you're shooting in frames per second, if that makes sense. Yeah, anyway, 24 frames per second, you want to double that shutter speed, and you want to shoot 48, 1/48, something like that. But most cameras don't offer that, so it'll be 1/50th, I think it is. So 50 shutter speed. That number with shutter speed, that should say 1/50 or 50. 60 frames per second, 120 shutter speed, 125 shutter speed, I should say, and 24 frames per second, 48 shutter speed, or 50, 1/50. That's all it is. If you don't make sure you double your shutter speed in your slow motion, then when you go and post to slow it down, it's not gonna work. Like, you'll see how non-smooth that it is because you didn't have the proper shutter speed set. It just won't look right for you. So make sure you double your shutter speed for whatever frames per second that you're shooting it. Double your shutter speed. I said it 10 times because it's important. After shutter speed, we have our ISO, and this is also part of exposure triangle, but these are the camera settings we use for music video that we're talking about. So your ISO for music videos. Now your ISO, you want to look up the native ISO for your camera, and native ISO is just basically like where your camera works best without increasing too much power and creating noise from your ISO. So most people, I think it's like 1600 that you don't want to go over. I try to even stay up under that. So I make sure I light my scene properly wherever I'm at. I make sure I have a well-lit scene, and I don't want to stress out my ISO because I don't want noisy footage. Now, what happens is when you boost that ISO so much, you create all this grain, all this noise inside your footage. It don't look good at all. You don't want to do that. So to help that, you can get more expensive lens or faster lens. That's lens with like a lower f-stop. So you talking about like 1.8 f-stop or 2.8 f-stop. That'll help you with low light situations. Or you can just, if you're able to, light the situation properly. Make sure you invest in some lights, and that'll help you. You know what I mean? You don't want to stress the settings of the camera. It won't give you the image quality that you might be looking for, that I hope you're looking for. So we talked about frames per second, we talked about the shutter speed, and we talked about your ISO for music video setting. Next, I will talk about shooting in a flat color profile. So color profiles, log profiles, that's what I shoot in. And it's a flat profile, and it just gives you more flexibility when it comes to color grading, depth, you know, dynamic range, I should say, dynamic range. It gives you more flexibility. You know, filming in a flat color profile is very, very important. Like, you don't have to do it, but if you want this certain image quality, then you should definitely do it. Shooting in auto, camera auto is like, it's for rookies, man. That's what it's for. It's for rookies. If you're shooting in auto, if you have your camera settings stuck on auto, you're not gonna be able to create what you want to create. When you have your camera on auto, it sets your ISO for you, shutter speed for you. It try to fetch every situation where you move. It tries to adjust to the light, and it's doing its job because you have an auto. But that's not what you want when you shoot music videos, you know. So shooting a log profile, flat profile for Canon, it's like C-Log, Sony S-Log, and yeah, all these logs. So we talked about frames per second, shutter speed, ISO, shooting in a flat profile, and now I can just give you like some tips for shooting a music video that's not your settings. So get plenty of B-roll. That would be tip number one. Advice number one, very important. Get plenty of B-roll, 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 B-roll. B-roll is your slow motion footage. It don't have to be slow motion, but most likely your B-roll is your slow motion footage, and it tells your story. Any scene you're at, we can be at one location, we could be at 5 locations. I'm gonna get plenty of B-roll at each location because it's gonna help me tell my story. It's gonna help me bring the viewers to wherever we're at shooting video, right? It gives them the mood that you want to feel. Speaking of mood, that's when you have like your color tones that'll come with color grading. You setting these certain moods because you want to give out this certain vibe. So you may have a cool tone, you may have a warm tone. That helps. That actually does its job. It's not nothing we just talk about. Having cool tones, warm tones, that give a certain message. It brings a certain vibe to a music video. So plenty of B-roll, get plenty of B-roll. If you ever lacking on performance footage or anything, your B-roll will save your life. Performance scenes. So my advice for performance scenes would be to get a wide shot and get a close-up shot for every single performance scene. So if I want to sit a person in front of this aperture light dome, I'm gonna give me a close-up shot of performance, and I'm gonna give me a wide shot. And it just helps in post. It helps with your creativity. It helps if one shot is out of focus, one shot overexposed, underexposed, you always have backup. It works for me, you know. So get multiple shots, at least 2 different shots, 2 different angles of that same exact performance, because it look good in post. When you edit, chop, you know what you're doing, you can make it look real good. So that's about it. Music video settings and a few music video tips that can help you make your music videos look better today. Now, maybe next video we'll talk about how to bring in clients, how to make money shooting music videos, how to start shooting music videos, and just building clients. However, like, it's so much we could talk about. This is what I do. I've been shooting music videos for 5 years now. I'm still growing, still going up the ladder. And I just want to bring what I know to the table. This is the way I learn, so I know you can learn. It's very possible. Keep watching, like, follow, subscribe, like, follow. I said them all twice, so you can make sure you go do it. Follow down below, like, subscribe, and we'll give more videos like this, if that makes sense. 7 Visions.